we're gonna start with this painting and we're gonna begin in the background. I'll show you the colors that we're gonna work with. It looks like we have two blacks, but they're actually different. So I'm gonna take a flat brush and just kind of pull it down so you can see. That's called a Payne's Gray. Payne's Gray is a gorgeous dark navy blue. Okay, and then the black, if I were to pull that down, you can see that it's black. And then I've got my white. So that's what I'm gonna use in my background. I'm not even gonna clean my brush off. I'm gonna use what's called a flathead brush. And I'm using the large one. I had already started on this other day, but my dogs are barking. I have chickens in the art room and a bunny. The bunny makes no noise. So anyways, what I wanted to do was go ahead and start in the background. And I'm using the Payne's Gray, that beautiful navy blue. And I'm just gonna paint the background. I always kind of like to work a little fast. So like all this is dry because I did that yesterday. But when I say I like to work a little fast, acrylic is not going to dry really fast on us, but with the background, we're going to want to play with it while it's wet. When you work with oil paints, you have a much slower dry time. You have days to work with that. But again, painting is always about layering. So even if your background, in this case, this dark navy blue, technically Payne's Gray, if it were to dry up on you, just add another layer of it. It's not going to hurt or harm anything in regard to the background. So how would I go about describing what the background looks like? We're going to, in the image, we've got these gorgeous streaks. It really reminds me of like a wooden palette look. It's a similar technique I would paint, like what I'm going to teach, if we were trying to create a wood texture. So obviously I'm just still kind of applying the Payne's Gray, and then I'm going to go into the technique. So notice that my paint strokes, as I get into small crevices, I'll do some horizontal, whatever works to get the paint on the canvas. But then I'm going to want my brush strokes to be up and down, vertical paint strokes. Okay, so here, this is what we're going to do next. I'm not cleaning my brush off. I'm dipping it straight into the white, just a little bit. And what I'm going to do is create some white streaks, such as that. And just for fun, I'm going to do it on this side where the painting's already dry. So the right side over here is wet, over here is dry. Now what I'm going to do, paper napkin, I'm not dipping my brush into the water. Reason being, if we get water on it, sometimes too much water stays on the brush and it messes up this next technique. So I just pinched the brush between the paper towel and I pulled it out. So now I'm going to do what's called a dry brush technique. And I'm going to just continue with the up and down vertical movement. And I'm going to feather in the white into the background. So wherever you apply the white is obviously where you're going to have like the strongest streaks, but you can just kind of feather it back and forth until you're happy. What I'm not doing is I'm not blending it in so that it becomes a new color in the background. I want to keep that stripe. Okay, so this side, the background was already dry and I applied the white and the white dried pretty quickly. So you'll see that it didn't give me much time to really play with it, but what it did allow me to do and for us to see is it's giving us a nice white distinct space. So in our original painting, we are going to have areas where it's going to be a stronger white, other areas where it's blended in. So that's going to be the fun part about working with this canvas is you're going to figure out what works well for you. So you notice I didn't wipe my brush off this time. I wanted to apply a little thicker, stronger white streaks just so you guys can kind of see different ways to go about it. Now what I'm doing, I dip my brush into the Payne's Gray and I'm just going to kind of brush it over some of those white streaks that came out a little too prominent. Again, painting is all about layering. So it's not that we're hiding our mistake by layering, but we're allowing colors to be seen through previous layers. So, okay, hope that makes sense. And I'll just keep painting, and first time doing a video on YouTube, so I believe I'll be able to cut this portion out. Otherwise the video is gonna get long. You'll see as I come along the initial, I'll use my brush and I'll pull up and away from it. I'm doing a much smaller canvas than what you guys are going to be working with. So I should be able to tackle this and get through it quicker than you will. And again, I'm going to try to edit out some areas because you don't need to see me doing the same thing over and over. If I were to dip my brush into water, I could use the water to help drag the color in different directions. So there really is no need to have like, it also lightens up the color, right? So this is just water and the Payne's gray. But it's not really giving my canvas a good solid cover up, right? But it does give you an ability, as you can see. We won't use this technique necessarily in this painting, but adding water to your brush helps you create like transparency techniques. So I've done it before when I was doing clothing, and there were some lacy parts on it was like Indian clothing, and they had this gorgeous lace that wrapped around, and I didn't want to cover up the colors. The colors of the dresses are so important. But I used water and the color white, or just white, and I was able to get the lace texture. I wish I was as smooth as Bob Ross. Wow, he can talk and paint really well at the same time. All right. So now we're just gonna dip into the white. I'm trying to paint where you can see. I'm continuing with those long horizontal brush strokes. Okay, I think I like it. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the black, a little bit of black. Same technique, I'm just going to put it in certain areas where I want to make it a little bit darker. Remember, we're not trying to blend it in where it changes the background color. We're just adding it enough to add dimension to the background. It's like if we're getting our hair done and we want to add highlights or lowlights, we don't want to change our overall color. It's not the intention. Our intention was to go in and oftentimes just add a little pizzazz, just a little bit of color. And that's kind of what we're doing here. Now I'm gonna clean my brush in the water. I'm gonna let my background dry before I move into creating like the nice, you know, sketched out border. And before I do my green ivy. So probably what I'll do next is maybe start playing with the flowers or the actual letter. This is a good time to go ahead and clean out your water. You don't want to get that dark blue on your letter or in your flowers. Okay, so I have my white. I'm gonna use this color. I'm gonna use the white in that for the letter of my choice that I'm using. It's like a rose. And I'm also gonna use a bright yellow. So there's difference in the colors. So I'll use this for the other flowers. Okay. This is a good time to pull out your medium brush. You have a large, medium, and small. The medium brush will allow you, well, your canvas again is larger than mine, so you could probably technically use your large brush, but my canvas is much smaller, so I'm going to use my medium. You'll notice, can you see a little, oh, not too much, but I got a little bit of that Payne's gray on my letter. I'm not worried about it. So what I'm doing here is I'm adding like a white just to kind of cover up my letter real quick, and then that's going to allow me to get the yellow shade, like that beige, to glide on nicely. So we're doing all the blending on the canvas rather than pre-blending on our palette. So my letter E is all primed with white paint, and I'm not going to do the bright yellow. I'm going to do kind of like this beigey mustard color. And I'm just going to kind of highlight it in certain areas. Just putting a little bit on the brush. Okay, now what I'm going to do is just take what I have on my brush and work it into the white that I have on my canvas. There's certain areas of my letter that I want to have a little bit stronger yellow, and other areas where I want it to be a fainter yellow. So this is one way to go about it. And then we'll be able to go back in on the letter and add, like if I feel like it's a little dry, I'm just adding more white to my paintbrush. Oh, see, that blue is still wet, but that's okay. I'll use it to my advantage here in a second, but now I'm getting too much. Let that area dry a little bit. If that happens to you, no worries, just let it dry. We'll cover it up with white, and then we'll go back and get that beige or mustardy color back on there. So I had applied more white to my brush, and that's why the bottom part of the E is kind of faded and kind of pale compared to the rest of the letter. So I'm just going to apply more of that here. Okay, I think that's looking really nice. It's looking similar. If I want, I could get some of that bright yellow, and I could use that. Okay, so here we'll just apply that bright yellow. You'll see how distinctly different that bright yellow is and how it'll really change the look of your letter. I like the idea of value scale, going from maybe that bright to like, you know, that sunshine bright, and just kind of maybe adding some of that beige on top of it. You'll find kind of what you like. You're welcome to kind of play with those two colors together. I think it might be a little more yellow than what I like, and I like the original painting quite a bit, so I'm just going to put some more white back on my brush, and I'm just going to kind of rework the E. So I'm gonna let that dry. The E, all of the letters are gonna have an outline, and that outline is gonna be in black. So it'll be stronger than that Payne's gray in the background. But I'm gonna let it dry and then I'll come back and do the outlines. I think next what I'm gonna do is work on my yellow flowers on the top and the bottom, because the pink will overlap both. So I'm gonna use the same technique, get white on my brush, and I'm gonna work in a circular pattern, and I am gonna overlap the blue background, that Payne's gray background. What I want you to kind of notice as I paint, I'm doing a curve line. I'm making a bunch of like curve lines. So that's gonna emphasize our petal. You see, I take it, I swish it out, I'm swishing over the background and over the letter. I'm still using my medium brush. If you feel more comfortable, I would recommend using your medium brush and then working towards your small brush. But we're gonna do the same concept. I have a little bit of yellow on my brush, that bright yellow, and I'm gonna do the same swishing pattern. I'm not gonna cover up all of the white. I'm gonna get a little bit more yellow. So it's like you're about to paint a circle with this brush stroke, but then you just don't complete that circle. You can pick up some of that yellowish, not the, some of that mustard yellow, and you can kind of add that in here as well. So what you want to keep in mind, maybe we'll go ahead and switch to our smaller brush. So what you want to keep in mind, I'll get the original picture, is as we create that half circle brush stroke, we're going to do the same thing and work our way in. So we've got the big one, and then we're going to have a smaller one, and then a smaller one. So we have about 1, 2, potentially 3 layers of petals. If I were to get out a marker, you're gonna have 3 layers, okay? You're gonna have 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we're just gonna work with that shape and that idea of layering, and we'll gravitate towards our smaller brush as we get into more detailed spaces. So I could use this mustard color to kind of outline some of the swishes, the half circles that I had done. If I need to bring this a little closer. So with these flowers, we're really creating a layered technique. We have the white, then we have the bright yellow, then we're working with that mustard color, and then I'm gonna pick up some white again on my tiny brush, and I'm gonna pick up that white on my palette, and I'm gonna dab it on my palette because I don't want too much. I'm not shoveling it onto my paintbrush in this situation. I'm just wanting to have enough so I can go in here, and that white is gonna give me the ability to kind of play with the color that I have on my canvas, and it's going to allow me to move that color around. So it's giving me the opportunity to move the color that I have. I'm still working in that curved brush stroke pattern that we had discussed. Remember, you don't want to have too much paint on your paintbrush when you're doing this. We're just applying just enough to kind of lighten it up. Or in certain situations, you might want to go and darken it up. It's kind of up to you. The next step would be to go in and create some highlights where I just want to add some white in there to make some of the petals pop. See, it's starting to pop. We've got layers and we keep working in that half circular pattern. We can always go back in and add more darker areas, more low lights. So I'm going to do the same thing over here to this. Oh, there goes Nora. She sees somebody outside. Okay, so our flowers are starting to come to life. So like down here, we first applied, I believe what we did our circular pattern, right, with our white. And I'm just gonna repeat everything that we talked about up above. So we did the circular patterns with the white, large half circles to medium half circles to smaller half circles as we work our way in. And then we get a little bit of the yellow on our brush and we repeat those half circle patterns. At this point, it's like the background. We're not trying to cover up the color that we have or the white. We're just wanting to put some color on, and we'll play with paint and just move the colors around to define our shapes. Now I'm going to pick up some of the mustard yellow. I'm going to find the areas where I want to apply that mustard yellow to really help pop the shape of some of those petals. The great thing about video is you can start and stop whenever you want. On the recording end, like what I'm doing right now, I'm just gonna film the whole thing and then try to take out certain parts that are not necessary. All right, so you see that I've applied 3 layers, the white, the bright yellow, and the mustard yellow. So who remembers what we do next? We grab a little bit of white on our brush, right? We take the white and then we dab it on our palette because we want white on our brush, but we don't want it shoveled on there. And the purpose of the white right now is to move this color around. So I've got it on here just enough where I can go in with my white. I could blend a little bit to change up that mustard yellow to be like having some highlights and different values, but I'm really just working that curved line. That's all we're doing, is we're just reworking that curved line. A flower is so pretty because it has more than just one color. It's like different values of a color. In this case, it's really playing with those soft, warm yellows. And as this dries more, what I'll probably do is go back with my white and add some really strong highlights towards the end of this video, okay? Now what I'm noticing is my flowers are very much the same color as my letter, and I want my flowers to pop more than I want my letter to pop. So I wasn't expecting that to happen. So what I'm gonna do is get my medium brush, dip it in white, and I'm gonna soften my letter. My brush has some water on it. So remember, I don't know if I'm gonna end up cutting that part out, so I'll repeat what I was saying. Whenever you have water on your brush and white, you can make kind of like a very translucent shade. So when I've done clothing in the past, if they have like a lace that goes over the beautiful bright colors, I just water down my white to create that lace. And it allows the color to still shine through like bright and vivid, but it shows the delicacy of the lacy material. And with the lace, then what you would end up doing is going in and doing some white detail work to show like stitch patterns and stuff like that. So, okay, I'm happier. I'm much happier because I I don't feel like my flowers are competing against the letter. I feel like the letter is in the background, and I want the flowers to pop and kind of be on top of it. So I'm much happier. Okay, now I'm gonna take my medium brush and I'm gonna work on my middle flower. I think we have one lady in the group that wants to do a pale blue instead of a pink. You're gonna do the exact same thing that I'm teaching, except when I do pink or that rose color, you're gonna be doing your pale blue. All right. Okay, so remember, we're just doing that curved line approach. I really just kind of painted this circle white, essentially, but yeah. I'm gonna dry my brush off on my paper towel, and I'm gonna come back in with the rose pink. I'm working with my medium brush. You can work with your small brush, whichever one is easier. This one might be a little easier to see because we're working with a more dominant color compared to the yellows. But the cool thing with the yellows is you're able to see the layering process of paints. Okay, so I've got my outer rim of pink. I'm gonna switch to my smaller brush because now I'm getting into a tinier space. I'm gonna do the exact same thing I did with my medium brush. I'm gonna dip my brush into the pink, and I'm gonna do those curved lines, but I'm gonna just do them a little bit smaller. Now, I know you guys are very talented art family, so if you have another way you wanna go about your flower, go for it. This is just one style. There's more than one way to go about painting a flower. All right, but I'm gonna definitely teach you the blending and layering approach on your canvas. So now what I'm gonna do is switch back to my white, just like we did with the yellow. And the reason I'm putting some white on here is so that I can play with the color and move it around a little bit and maybe do a little bit of blending, right? So remember, when I pick it up, it might be too much. So I always kind of dab it on my palette so that I'm not really going in to paint with the white. I'm going in with the white to move my colors around and to really kind of help emphasize some of those beautiful curves of those petals. If I feel like I'm getting too much pink mixed in with my white, I'll just clean my brush off on my paper towel. I'll move back in with white. Now, here's one of the things. We really want our petals to do some overlapping, right? So I'm gonna take it over that yellow and intentionally do a little bit of an overlap. I wanna make sure I have a nice overlap on my letter E. Okay, and then you can always go back in with your pink and you can really define certain areas. If we look at our example, and you'll have this example in front of you as you're painting, the center is dark, right? And there's gonna be some bright pink around that center. So before I do that bright pink around that center, I guess my next step is to jump in and go ahead and start painting the center of our flower. And then we'll do some touch-up petals around that. So I'm gonna use my small flathead brush. I'm also gonna have some tiny round-headed brushes. Round-headed brushes are just pointy. So you could use that or this. And we're just gonna create a little circle. It's best anytime you're working with black that you make your circle smaller and know that you can always go bigger. If you go too big, it's hard to cover it up. I didn't say impossible, I just said hard. You just have to wait for it to dry. And then you apply some white and rework your colors on top and around it. So last one, remember we wanna work small and we can always go bigger, okay? So we're gonna let that black dry and we'll come back and play with those petals in a little bit. Since we're working with the black and we've got this brush, actually I'm gonna use my medium brush. We're gonna go ahead and do the outline of our letter real quick. And then we're gonna move into the background and start working on the greenery. Okay, so I've got my medium flathead brush. I'm using medium because it gives me a long enough line. We're gonna be using the length of the edge to create the lettering. So I'm gonna take it, okay, you can see there. And so there we go. And do the same thing along here. Now these letters are kind of cool and interesting. They're kind of 3D. So we're gonna just have to kind of work with the concept. I'll have the alphabet chart printed out for you guys so you can see it as well. Like how your letter is intentionally supposed to All right, I've lost that C shape in the background. This C shape to the greenery. So what we're gonna have to end up doing is probably eyeball it. We wanna have enough space on the edge to do the beautiful outline, the border. So just remember you wanna have it start a little bit in, you wanna be able to curve up and around. It needs to meet between these two flowers, and it's gonna come out towards the bottom and kind of come on up. So it's in the shape of a C. I'm gonna use my medium brush and I'm gonna start right here. Like that. You don't wanna make it too thick. It's gonna be covered with green. And actually kind of comes out probably from over here a little bit. There we go. Okay. And we need our greens. Let's see. I'm gonna use this green, I think. Right, middle green. Oh yeah, it's gonna be really pretty. I like that. Okay, so we're gonna have some fun layering our greenery in the background. We can use our medium brush again to just pick up some of that middle green, and we can just apply it on top of the white. The middle green might be a little too bright. I might change our color palette from middle green to something else. Yeah, it's super bright. It's really pretty though. But I don't think it's the right hue. So we're not going to use middle green. X that one. Let's try maybe this one. I have so many greens. How about, I was thinking the sap green might be too dark, but not as dark as my olive green. So, okay, let's try sap green. You can tell on the palette the difference between the two. All right, let's try this one. Bingo. Yeah, I'm happier. All right, so you might wonder, why did we do that white layer first before applying the sap green? Just to help that green kind of show. Really is what we needed. And now we're going to take our small brush and we're going to work with that sap green. We're going to create, see if I don't apply white, look how dark it is. But what I'm going to do is, instead of applying white on all of them and then going back with green, we're going to try a technique where we're going to apply it straight on as the green. And then we'll go back with some white and some yellows and we'll blend. So this part, we're just kind of doing like curve line where the two meet. And you just have to place them where you find it aesthetically pleasing, what looks good to you. Some are gonna be bigger, some are gonna be smaller. Now what I'll do, if I get a little bit of white on my brush, dab it on my palette, I can add some white to that green. And it pops, see? So we didn't totally lose it. What's nice about doing the green first and then applying the white is you can kind of reshape the leaf. You can make it bigger, you can make it smaller. Now my brush has white and green blended in on it. So I'm just gonna play with some of the paint that I have. So they're kind of appearing lighter anyways. One thing that you do wanna pay attention to is, it's kind of like when painting palm trees. You want to make sure your palms are all going in the direction that they should go. Otherwise, things are going to look kind of wonky. So just think kind of like a triangle, like you're going out this way, right? So just kind of, when you get here, the triangle changes. The point of the triangle is now downward. So let's see if you can see. So you're going up and up. Over here, your point of the triangle is here. So you're going here to here. Down here, where's the point of the triangle? Here to here. Hopefully it helps. Here, it's down. So the point is here, and then you're gonna go out, okay? All right, as I'm working on mine, Two things that I'm thinking of. One is we can go in and we could add a little bit of yellow to some of the green leaves. You don't have to if you don't want to. But it's really gonna give it a little punch. And it is in the painting, and the example was a beautiful example. So if you're really loving what you see in that example, you can go ahead and add some yellow. So right now we just have the sap green, white, and yellow. The other thing that I was gonna bring up is I did my brush in black, and I feel like my branch that everything is on is a little too thick. So what I'm gonna do is just take my black and overlap some of that green. I think it just lessens the intensity. So like over here, I feel like it looks a little thick. I don't really see the black outlining any of the leaves, but just to soften that black, I could bring it into some of the leaves. So that's one thing that you could do. All right. The other thing that they have going on in the background up here are these cute little white dots. So I'm going to use the back end of my tiny brush and I'm going to dip it into the white, and I'm going to go in and add some detail. Cute, huh? Some of the dots are bigger, some of the dots are smaller. It's nice to have that variation, so just be aware. All right, I know I haven't finished this bottom part, and that's okay, but I want to go ahead and jump to some other areas so that this video is not too long. I don't know how long it'll take to upload in the background, but what I want to do next is take my large flat brush, and I'm going to create that border. So it's not a total solid line, so you'll want to have some breaks in it. And this really frames out the piece nicely. You'll notice in the original picture that it has more than one frame, so it's accented with some more lines inside and outside. All right, also in the original picture, it's not super white. So what we could do is pick up that mustard yellow on our brush, and we could go back over the white areas and give it that nice golden touch, which is so incredibly pretty next to that navy blue Payne's gray shade. But I do like the white as well. It really pops. It's really pretty. All right, so we have some more detail to do in our flowers. Now remember, this green, you'll continue it all the way down and around. All right, So the more detail I want to do in my flower, remember it's pretty dark pink right around the center of the flower, and I just wanted that black to dry. So I'm going to go in, remember we're doing the curved lines. In this case, it works in our favor when the flower is a little dry now. Before we wanted to play with the color, now we're going to go in and just add those highlights and lowlights. So I'm just going to go in and do some detail work with my brush to add just some darker areas. And I can also add some lighter areas. Clean my brush off. I go in and try to add some white highlights right now. I'm not going in to do blending. I'm just barely any white on my brush. And as I apply it to the canvas, hopefully it'll help those really bright pink rose areas pop more. I like it. And then I'll use the back end of my tiny brush, got some white on it, and just copying the example, I'm just gonna add the dots inside. I don't know that this turned out so great. So I'll go back and, here we go, cute. I think that showed up pretty nice. Okay. If for any reason you don't like those bigger, bolder pink lines, all you have to do is go back in with some white and soften it. So it's interesting, like I'm looking on the camera and I'm looking at too many different versions of the painting here. And it's not allowing my eye to adjust to what I do like, so I need to stop. All right, so I'm just gonna leave it like that, and then I'm gonna go back to my yellow flowers and darken around the center. I think it looks really nice. Okay. The last thing that we have is we have these really pretty little blue flowers, and we can go ahead and add those. The way that we would go about adding them is working with our small brush because it's a small flower. And I'll start with white, and I'm just gonna put like a little circle here. And then it looks like we have a bigger one and then a smaller one right there. And got one coming out right here. And let's see, where else do we have one? Down here. Yeah, it kind of overlaps the E. Okay. Kind of just want to mess around real quick with the Payne's Gray and see what that looks like with the white. But yeah, it's gonna probably blend in too much with the background. It's nice. It's really, really nice, but in this picture, they're working with, let me find another blue. Kind of debating between these two, deep turquoise or the cobalt blue. I think I'm gonna go deep turquoise because it's gonna be blended with the white. Okay. I'm barely gonna need any of it. Okay. So in regards to these flowers, we're just gonna do a curve line, just a bunch of halfway curve lines. What do you guys think about that color? How's that coming up? I think it looks really nice. If you want, you get some white and of course layer. Remember, some of the petals are longer, some are shorter. It just depends where it is on the flower. How's that look? Okay, cool. I am kind of painting at a weird angle. I'm not painting straight on, I'm coming in from the side. It works. The camera is facing straight on. I'm facing crooked, but it works. All right, I was gonna say, oh, we don't need those little blue flowers. But look at them. They're pretty. I love them. Okay, so what do we have to do to finish up this picture? Let's do this. Is that? Okay, we have some more greenery to do down here. We have little white dots to do for accent that we started up here. I could probably clean my E up a little bit more. Other than that, I like it. One thing that I may have done more of in the background is create maybe a little bit more white streaks, but let's see if the camera will adjust. It is there. It does look good. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed.